Click and record. Here we go. Okay. Okay, hey everyone. So me, Lewis, and Susan are here, and yeah, we decided to do a podcast on relationships in regards to nutritional balancing science, and talk about our personal experiences, talk about how it relates to relationships, and yeah, just kind of go from there. You guys want to introduce yourselves? Well, we know me and Lewis. How about you introduce yourself?
Well, anyone that's watched, I mean, a lot of people just will click on this from YouTube. So, yeah, my name's Lewis. I'm also a nutritional balancing practitioner, of course. I work with Luke on Deep Healing Space. So, yeah, been on the program now for about 7 years. So, fair bit of experience and got some experience with relationships and stuff. So, I'm going to hopefully give you guys some tips.
Right. Want to introduce yourself, Susan?
Sure, I'm Susan Cachey, and I've been on here before with Luke and Lewis. They're colleagues of mine, and I'm a practitioner and a nutritional balancing coach, and I've been on the program for about 9 years now, 9.5 years maybe. And yeah, so I'm excited to be here to join you guys today.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we'll just start off with my experience, I guess. In the beginning of the program, I was definitely, like, the first couple years, I stayed mostly away from women. I didn't date anyone for the first, 2-3 years, I would say. It was mostly just going in, I actually moved back in with my grandmother. I saved as much money as possible. I built a YouTube channel. I figured out how to, run my own business. And then I worked part-time doing other jobs as well. And so that was a very, I think of that time in my life, especially, more contracting. I just brought everything in, just conserved as much healing energy, as many resources as possible. You know what I mean? And just kind of knew if I could do that I could then kind of go out more and, set up myself up for the rest of my life a little bit more, and my health and everything. So that was a pretty conscious decision the first 2 or 3 years. If you're a younger man, especially if you're a younger person, I really do recommend that in the beginning. If you're already single, I really recommend just focusing on yourself. For most people, till they're 30. Some people are ready sooner. But especially at the beginning of the program, you really want to focus on yourself, focus on your health, focus on learning how to build a business, or on your career, or whatever your career may be, if it's going to school or whatever that is. Really set yourself up, because you can really set yourself up for the rest of your life if you start off doing the right things in the beginning. You guys know what I mean? So I was working part-time at a restaurant, and then I actually started dating one of my coworkers. Now, I don't know if Susan, I think, knows a little bit about this story. Lewis knows more about this story, but that was a very interesting experience. The girl that I was dating, it's very interesting. You go on Dr. Wilson's website, right, and you read some of the more, there's some darker articles, right? We read some of the darker articles about the rogues and the stuff, and about rape and kind of these things. It's very different when you actually experience that happened to another person in real life. You know what I mean? And so I dated this girl for about 3 or 4 months, and the relationship was a lot about me doing healing work on her. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say it was we were together, but it wasn't like a lot of other relationships. I think partially I chose to be with her to try to heal her, and I did do a lot of healing work on her. You know what I mean?
Do you not think that was like a problem on your part, where you went into the relationship to try and fix someone rather than, do you know what I mean? I think that can be an issue sometimes, is going into a relationship trying to think that you can fix another person, when in reality you should actually be trying to aim to be a whole person and to meet a whole person in that kind of sense, with that mindset, rather than trying to fix someone. I think that you can run into problems sometimes when you do that.
Right. I mean, it was good for both of us. I could see on my hair tests, from an analytical standpoint, me, when I was actually in a relationship with her, was the most copper I ever dumped. You know what I mean? So I think temporary relationships can be okay if you're still focusing on the program, right? I was never not doing the program because I was with her. Does that make sense? And I think even part of me probably knew that we weren't going to be together for the rest of our lives. It was definitely a possibility, maybe, like if she could get to a point in her healing where she could overcome some of the things that she had to overcome. But the most important part for me was still like, I'm still healing. I'm still moving forward. As long as you're still moving forward with your development, regardless of the person that you're with, I think is probably the most important thing. You know what I mean? So that was a very good experience for me, just kind of learning how to manage that, how to if you're with a person that needs a lot of healing, how to handle that. You know what I mean? And in a lot of ways, it gave me a lot of confidence because of the more esoteric things that I had to go through with her. I learned a lot about myself and how strong I was, I think, spiritually. You know what I mean? You know, it's a very interesting thing when you rub a girl's feet, right? And it brings up entities inside of her, and you can feel the entities moving through you. And like you're having to kind of combat that side of things. You know what I mean? You know, sometimes the healing of itself is almost like becomes like an exorcism, right? You know what I mean? Like that. Like, so for me,
I don't know whether I know what you mean, because I don't know whether I've been in that situation. But
yeah.
theoretically, I know what you mean.
Right. So it's interesting. It was a good learning experience to like learn like that stuff is real. You know what I mean? That's things that people go through, and it's not just like, you know, religious fanaticism or, you know, a lot of times you do see those like there's the preachers on TV and they're doing the exorcisms and stuff on like in front of thousands of people. A lot of times those are fake. And like, you know, like he points his finger at the audience and they all get like, they all fling themselves back. You guys ever seen those like crazy videos of that?
Yeah.
The you know, a lot of that stuff is fake, right? But you know, but at the same time there is like that other side going on. And so it taught me like about myself, like I got better like protecting myself against that, and and I learned like some scars are so deep, like it's hard for normal people to understand how difficult it is to heal, right? So like probably even for like the three of us, like we've had to move through infections, and we've definitely like seen other sides of ourselves that we had to like let go and things like that. But it's important that we understand that there are some people that things happen to them that are so horrific. It's not like it is for us. It's like literally for them to heal, they have to like rip parts of themselves away from like their from themselves, and it's very, very difficult. And some scars run so deep that they probably will never be able to heal. I mean, they can, but it's literally like going back through like a nightmare. You know what I mean? And so it's very important to realize that for some people.
You know what though? Oh, sorry, Luke. Yes, I agree. But I just as we're talking about this, I do think that people have the ability to heal,
right,
deal with that trauma in the program. I know it can be extremely traumatic.
Right.
Moving forward, yeah. So I hope that's the case in that situation.
Right. Yeah. We definitely all have the ability. Like she definitely had the ability to heal herself, to be healed. But it's also at the same time, I think, important to realize that many people don't have that strength when something that horrific happens to them, and that they're never gonna be able to fully move through it, most likely, because it takes so much out of them to be able to move through it. But yeah, I don't want to get too down that path and too into that kind of darker stuff. But that was a very good learning experience for me. But we went our separate ways after about I think it was like 4 or 5 months. And then I didn't date anyone again for a couple years. You know, did focus more on my business again, focus more on my healing. For me, it's like a lot of like entrepreneurship type stuff. Like I got into real estate a little bit and did a lot of that kind of stuff. And then the girl that I married, Sarah, I started dating. I dated her for about a year before we got married. And it taught me a lot of things. You know, this relationship stuff taught me a lot of things too. Sometimes love, I think, for men isn't quite what we think it is. Like I think there's like kind of two separate kinds of love. There's a more lustful love that I used to experience more, where it's you like women that are more curvy, I think. and you like it's a more sexual kind of love that we trick ourselves into thinking is more of a love, but really in reality it's more of just like a lust. It's more of like a sexual want towards a woman. But with Sarah, it's less of that type of love, I realized, and there was more of another type of love where it's more like growing together and, you know, doing the program together and like finding out our flaws together and healing together and that sort of thing. But it's less lustful, it's less sexual in some ways. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely still like I'm sexually attracted to her, but it's not as much of like a heads over heels kind of thing. You know what I mean?
So she's doing the program as well.
Right. Yeah, she started doing the program.
How did she find that transition?
She was open to the program because she was open to me from the beginning. So she started doing the program within like a month of us dating, actually. It's because, I'm always pretty.
All of the program?
What's that?
All of the program?
Yeah, it was the same. It was basically the same with the other girl I dated too. I mean, I'm always very open with them. I'm always like, listen, this is a part of my life. If you're not going to do this with me, I can't be with you. So it just is what. So I told her that. You know what I mean? Cool. So, and because she was open to me, you know, she was open to doing the program. But yeah, she basically did it. You know, from the beginning. The beginning for a woman on the program, in my experience, especially if she comes together with a healthier man, is quite difficult. Some of their retracings are quite brutal. Sarah went through a couple really bad retracings where she had horrible abdominal pain. You know, I had to call Larry, and like I had to call Larry like at night, like 2 or 3 times while Sarah was going through these first couple retracings. They were really, really bad. They were very, very physical. You know, she had just immense abdominal pain, you know, where she was like on the floor, like, you know, like crying, like kind of pain. So it could be difficult, I think, in the beginning.
I mean, how do you handle that? Because if you're like saying to someone, this is the way that I live, like I can't be with anyone who's kind of doesn't do this. She's not starting the program off her own back. So she's doing it like in faith in many respects. So when she's lying there on the floor in pain, is she not thinking, I need to go to the hospital here? And you're like trying to convince her that
no, she definitely wanted to go to the hospital.
Difficult to do.
Yeah, we almost went to the hospital a couple times. But I was able to, like, you know, rubbing her feet helped. Actually, popping her back helped a lot too. Like, I'd actually do the spinal twist for her. That actually helped more than I thought it would, along with rubbing the feet. And yeah, part of it was also like trying to convince her that we shouldn't go to the hospital and she'll move through it. But I'm not gonna lie, it was very difficult. So you know, it's important to realize about that program. The program, like, sometimes you go through situations like that. It's not all just like roses. You know, it's pretty damn difficult.
I would imagine that's the most difficult part of being in a relationship with someone is just. I mean, I'll talk about my story in a bit, but yeah, I mean, like. My healing reactions in the beginning were so intense that, like, I would not want my partner to go through that. You know, not that I don't think she should, but it's like, whoa, like, if I, you know, it's like I feel guilty. There's a certain part of me that would feel guilty, like.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And you have to realize also, it happens more extreme in my experience. If you're someone like me and Lewis, if you're a man that's been on the program, you've been doing the pushing down exercise for 5 years, and then you start to come together with a woman that's sicker than you are, you know, they're not as developed as you are. It speeds up the healing. You know what I mean? And it causes the healing reactions in the beginning to be there, in my experience, because of that. You know, when you come together with a woman, you share the same energy. And so if a man's been doing the pushing down exercise, has been on the program for 5 years, and he comes with a woman that hasn't, and they start sharing the same energy, it just accelerates things. It can make in the beginning it can make the healing reactions pretty severe in my experience. So it's something to be aware of when you come together with a person. You know what I mean? Even if they don't have a lot of symptoms, and they're like, Sarah doesn't have a lot of symptoms, and she was like, she's a pretty smart lady, and she's not like she doesn't have like a lot of issues or anything like that. But it was just but even then, it was still very physical. You know, some healing reactions. So that's something to be aware of. It can be difficult in the beginning to bring them up to your level. You know what I mean? But I also think that's kind of the natural order of things. I do think it is best in most cases. They kind of teach this in like Eastern philosophy too. If the man could come together with God in the beginning and then share God with the woman. And I think Roy Masters talks about this too. You know, and then as he brings the woman up, then the woman can kind of unfold and then help him heal at a later stage. You know what I mean? That's probably not going to be, obviously, that's not going to be Susan's experience, right? Because Susan's a woman on the program, right? Because women can also find God. You know, they can basically marry themselves to God. You know what I mean? They don't necessarily, like a strong woman doesn't have to find God through a man. You know what I mean? Through the pushing down exercise on the program, a woman can find God herself. You know what I mean? But yeah, so the beginning of the program was very difficult with some of her retracings. Her daughter also went through a bad retracing. It's important to realize the families sync up on the program, so her and her daughter go through the same retracings. Like when one gets a fever and they retrace an infection, the other will too, within a couple of days of each other. It's kind of trippy, actually.
Yeah, families heal together. It's fascinating. Even if I have clients where they have pets on the program, they kind of all shift together. It's really something.
Yeah, it's quite the thing to behold. Like I knew actually that because Ivy my stepdaughter retraced first. I knew that Sarah was going to retrace in a couple days, and then she did. She basically went through the exact same thing Ivy did. The fever for a night. You know what I mean? It's fascinating. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, and then so yeah, now the program is because Sarah's over that hump. For the most part, I think it's become a lot easier for us to do the program together. You know, lately we've been trying to have down sex more. Down sex for me was kind of difficult in the beginning. It's kind of hard. I think for me with down sex, it's like getting the positions right. It's hard to like, I don't know. It's difficult to keep an erection and like while she's like on top of you, like trying to meditate. I don't know. And then like if you're not being sexual, like then you lose the erection. And then it can be kind of difficult.
I think it might be best if the word got changed. It's more like an exercise rather than sex.
Yes, right.
People confuse it too much. I think like if you're gonna do that, you need to see it as a healing exercise modality rather than a sexual practice, because it's not sex as we know it. And if it's no point in trying to confuse that, because it does get confusing.
Right. But yeah, I mean, me and Sarah go through things. We don't like we don't fight a lot or anything, but like I definitely see aspects of like of myself and her, you know, learning to be like more patient with her over things. I think I've learned a lot about patience being with Sarah. Like for instance, like when she was doing her taxes or something, or like, you know, she's not very good with that kind of stuff, right? So she's like asking me very simple, to be questions that would be very simple for things, right? Like how to do her taxes or how to file this paperwork or something. Learning to be patient is definitely something that I learned. Yeah, I think we're definitely more like our roles kind of shifted a little bit too. In the beginning, she worked more, whereas now she's not. I had her to where she's not working as much, which is good. Which I like more because she has more free time to heal, things like that, and she has more time to like do more of like the cooking and stuff like that, which she enjoys. And I think she's slowly kind of getting better too at like building little side businesses too, which is cool. I think I've been able to help her with some of that kind of stuff because I think that's something I'm naturally kind of good at. And it's been fun raising Ivy too. It's fun seeing her stepdaughter heal. I think that for a man having a daughter helps you kind of learn a lot about women in a non-sexual way. I think I had talked about Lewis with this once. I think I mentioned this to Lewis once, that having a daughter, I think, helps a lot, can help men relate to women more in some ways, in a non-sexual way. So that's been a good experience, like playing with Ivy and like helping her learn things and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's about it for my experiences. You know, it's a learning process, and in the beginning, I do recommend that, especially if you're a younger person, you should probably be focusing on yourself. For the most part, if you're under 30, especially, because a lot of people aren't ready for a relationship, and a lot of times ourselves into thinking we need a relationship in our early 20s or in our teenage years. But for the most part, they're a waste of time, and they take away from our energy, and a lot of them are toxic too. But yeah, that's basically it for the most part, from my experience. You know.
Cool. Yeah, man. Maybe let's keep rolling, and then maybe at the end we can go back and dip in and out. So
yeah.
Let's move on to Susan. Susan, tell us.
Oh dear. Okay. Well,
this your experience with experience with your clients, whatever you want to talk about.
Okay.
To the audience. It's totally up to you.
Okay, so I'll start a little bit with my experience and then some of my clients, because I think that piece is important, because there's a piece that we mentioned before we started recording here where I do see some clients go through particular issues, and so I do want to address that. But it'll be interesting to have this piece in here, because I'm in quite a different place than you two, as being two younger men. I'm in my late 40s. So I'm in a little bit of a different place than you guys are. And if I were a younger woman in my 20s, I may not be in the same place, right? Because we change, and you know, situations change. But when I first started the program, I was already divorced, and I have a daughter, and I was in a relationship at that time, but not due to the program necessarily, but for other reasons, I ended that relationship, and I just focused on the program. So like you, Luke, I took, I don't know, it was probably 3 or 4 years that I didn't date. And I may have sooner if, you know, there was a lot of responsibility with just having my own practice, and I was a nutritional consultant even before getting into nutritional balancing, but also having a home and a daughter to look after and all of that. So it was a more challenging time for me, not just because of the program, but for other things that were happening. So I didn't date. And so one of the things that we were alluding to before we started recording is that as you get healthier, you change, your awareness increases. And we talk about this being a development program, and people do start to develop. And I'm sure that you guys have all have both sort of read a lot about vibrational frequencies, and, you know, like attracts like, and if you're vibrating at a certain level, you attract a person of that same vibrational frequency. And Luke, I do think that people come into your life sometimes for different reasons. Sometimes it's that they're not meant to stay forever, but you know, that they're there to move us forward in a particular way. So that just came to mind when you were talking about first relationship on the program. So I didn't date for a while. And then when I did start dating, I realized that, you know, the type of person, even the friendships that I had before I started the program had changed. The type of person that I was attracted to, the type of person that I was attracting in my life was different than before I started the program. So I found that piece was really interesting. And for me, and again, I'm in a different place. If I was a younger person, you know, going into a relationship where I was going to have more children or a family, which I'm not, this stance may be different. But I really feel for myself that I'm responsible for my half of the relationship. That's all I can be responsible for. If you're in a position, I feel, where you're trying to change somebody else, or, I mean, it's fine to encourage people to do the program or whatever, but I have this stance even with the clients that I work with, and I tell people this up front. I'm responsible for my half of the relationship. I can be a helper and I can support you if you're drawn to do this program, but it's not my job to convince you to do it or to sell you this program or to coerce you into doing this. That's not what I feel comfortable with. It's not what I feel comfortable with in any of the relationships that I have in my life. So I'm responsible for myself. Obviously, two people need to be a decent enough match. You need to be somewhat on the same page. There's no way that I'm going to necessarily have enough in common with somebody that parties all the time, that eats junk food all the time. That's just, it's too much of a mismatch. So I'm not talking about two people that are too far apart, but I'm saying in general, right, in all of my relationships, then the client is responsible for their half of the relationship with me, right? They're responsible for letting me know if they're struggling, and then we can troubleshoot. They're responsible for doing, you know, the what's required on the program and all of that. So that's more how I approach my relationships.
I was just about to say a lot of this is to do with victim mentality as well.
Yes.
You know, and it's something that I get with my clients and stuff, is that it's not, yeah, it's not my responsibility per se, but it's more about trying to empower the other person to take full responsibility for themselves and not play the victim, you know, because they're so, you know, we know how people live in this victim mentality these days. And I feel totally uncomfortable doing it as well, but I feel uncomfortable because it's not the truth of how you should live your life. You know, like everyone should be taking full responsibility. So I just wanted to chip in and mention that, because it's quite common.
Yeah, exactly. And similar to what Luke was saying about you know, the initially when he was a younger man being attracted to people because of that euphoric sort of sexual type of attraction. I think that younger women go through that too. And I think, well, I don't even know if it's an age thing. I think some people kind of are sometimes even stuck in that their whole lives because that's what they feel that love is. And so as I progressed through the program, and then as I started dating again, I started to think about, you know, and again, my developing and my awareness shifted, that kindness and consistency were two of the main traits that I really was drawn to and was really important. So I think that people can have like needs in a relationship and then wants. And needs for me would be things like the person would need to be kind, they would need to be consistent, they would need to have integrity, being generous. And I don't mean generous necessarily with money, but generous in spirit, meaning generous with positive comments, generous with their kindness, with their laughter, with their forgiveness. And then wants maybe, well, you know, I like a guy who's good with his hands, who can build stuff, who can fix stuff, who's 6'2" or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There's wants. Well, it's the needs part that's important. And what I realized was that a lot of my relationships didn't work out because I was focusing more on the wants instead of the needs. And so if you look at what is really important, and yes, there has to be that attraction there, but what I realized is as I developed and my awareness increased, I was really, it's the needs portion, it's the kindness, it's the consistency, it's the dependability that really sort of, I was really attracted to. Right? Instead of being, well, you know, that stability is kind of boring or whatever. There's not that. And that would fuel the attraction for me. So I'm different than Luke in that I don't say to people that I date, you have to do this program or I'm not interested in having a relationship with you. Because again, I'm responsible for looking after myself. They're responsible for looking after themselves. What I found with the people that I've dated, because I'm very upfront, I mean, they know what I do for a job, is that I find that when there's that mutual respect there, I get people that I date asking me questions. Well, what do you do that for? Well, what is your program about? What did you do that? And so since then, every person that I've dated has done sort of parts of the program, but I wouldn't necessarily require somebody to do all parts of the program, as long as we were on the same page, as long as they were respectful. That is it's a big part of my life, and I'm not going to change that. Similarly, you know, I don't eat wheat because it doesn't, I don't do well with it. I don't eat stuff like bacon, but if I dated somebody that was like, you know what, I want to have a piece of bread with my meal. Well, I'm not going to tell them they can't do that. they have to look after themselves. So I am in a relationship right now. That's a wonderful relationship. It's a very loving and kind relationship. And so let's say we're making dinner together. We generally would eat the same meal, but you know, I can't handle spice. He loves spice. So if I'm making dinner, I make sure I add extra spice to his. I'm not going to say to him, you have to eat your food as blandly as I do, or, you know, the reverse is true. So there has to be that respect piece there. And for me at my age, that is the most important thing. It's like we are two individual people, and then there's an overlap where we meet at this lovely place in the middle, but we don't have to be exactly the same.
Can I just quickly chip in on that one? I just wanted to ask you a question. One thing that worries me about, because I have that mindset as well, similar, but one thing that worries me is that I know in the past 7 years, the amount of development that I've gone through is so incredibly intense that I worry that I would just keep going, and the other person's gonna not keep up with the same level as me if they're doing their own thing or whatever. Obviously, I'd always go out with someone that's fairly similar. But I know just the speed at which that I tend to develop is so intense that I just think I'll be leaving this person behind, and it'll only be another year or two where I'm going to be like, look, I'm at a different level now. And I just think that's the biggest thing that concerns me. Do you ever think about that as well?
A little bit. Like that has happened in a previous relationship that I had, or someone that I was dating. But again, I don't necessarily think that you'll ever find somebody that is exactly you and that's going to develop at the same pace that you do. So what's more important to me is that the person is open, right, to things and is moving forward in their life. And I find that there are different ways to develop. Like we do develop quite quickly on the program. But even if you and I were dating, Lewis, we're not going to necessarily develop at the same time, right? So you're always sort of going to be, this person is not exactly the same.
But there'd be a deep understanding of what's actually going off. You know, so I'd feel much safer going through these intense things that tend to happen to me. I don't think Luke generally has gone through some of the intenseness of some of the stuff that I go through with the spiritual stuff and, you know, the retracing and whatnot, you know. So if I was going out with someone who was already on the program, I'd feel much safer to let myself go a little bit rather than someone who's not, you know, and I'm kind of introducing them to the program and all that kind of stuff.
And in an ideal world, yes. And in an ideal world, would it be wonderful to meet somebody who's already on the program and has decided to do that and is already on that path? It would be. But sometimes, as you know, people on the program are spread out all over. And it's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. And I mean, you can look at Dr. Wilson.
The other thing that I find, and you may find this in your relationship that you have now, is that because again, I don't push people. I can encourage and make suggestions, but you know, I don't coerce. Is that I find that when you're in a relationship with somebody and you are developing, and people in nutritional balancing tend to look better and better and get healthier and healthier overall over time, right? That people are naturally drawn to that. So oftentimes I find that if one person, and I notice this with my clients, if one person's on the program and doing different things, and you know, moving forward on the program, the other person's like, hey, well, what's that about? Oh yeah, you know what, I do feel better when you cook my meals and I'm not eating, you know, this other stuff that I'm used to eating. So again, relationships are about exploring, getting to know each other, and then sometimes along the way, there may be a point where you go, look, there's too much of a disconnect here, and it's not working. But that also happens in all relationships. Like you'll have friendships that will come up, and you know, you'll come together for a while and then part ways because you're just not on the same path anymore. So you know, it's
like when I look at Dr. Wilson, he's obviously an extremely developed person. Now that's, I don't know whether I aspire to be like that, but I'm very like intrigued by that. I think,
Right.
wow, that's intriguing. Like, I want to see where that leads me, because that seems to be a path that's good, And I think to myself, if I go down that path, how can I possibly, do you understand what I mean? If I'm in a relationship with someone and I'm going down that path, I just think, man, it's never going to work. That's a big question on my mind.
So you have a relationship where both people are kind and consistent and respectful. Again, you don't have to be exactly the same, right? So just because you don't have someone that's exactly the same, and again, some people choose just not to have a relationship because they feel good on their own, and that's totally fine too, right? If you go, my path is here and I don't feel like there's going to be anybody that's there, right? Then that's fine too. But if you're wanting a relationship with somebody and you're going, well, we have this place, and again, think about two circles, right? Think about two different people, two circles. If you guys are too far apart, there's no connection at all. But if you're like this, right, that's not good either. You're too enmeshed everywhere. Like that oftentimes doesn't work. There needs to be sort of a place where there's a connection and there's a bit of an overlap, and then you still are your own individual people. So if two people have like a lot of different interests and are different people, but there's still a place in that respectfulness and kindness where they can connect, oftentimes that still works really well. So, but everybody is different, right? And I think it's those core personality values that are so important that make the biggest difference on whether or not a relationship will work. So and that's what I see. So getting to people on the program and things that I see, if there's a couple on the program and one person starts the program and the other person doesn't, what we have seen is that, wow, this person develops, their awareness increases. This person kind of doesn't. They're not moving in the same direction. But problems that happen are usually because this person that's not developing and the awareness isn't increasing is disrespectful and not in agreement of the other person who's doing the program. The times I've seen it work, exactly, I've seen it work where a person's on the program, person's not, and they still get along great. And that's because there is a deep respect for the other person's individuality. Right? I mean, it's wonderful when couples are on the program together, it usually brings them closer. Sometimes when one person starts to develop, they can see that the relationship that they've been in is not a healthy one. And they're aware of that and they go, wow, I need to do something and I need to leave this relationship because it's not a healthy relationship. Like it's, but it can work with one person being and one person not, if there's that respect for, yes, I'm going to support you. This is what you need to do. Great. It's not where I'm at, but the respect is there.
Right. I think what we're also seeing here is that there's going to be somewhat of a difference what we want with gender and age.
Yes.
I mean, me and Lewis are young men. So, I mean, for me personally, I'm a young man. So preferably I would like to have a young woman that I could put on the program. And then she grows with me, right, and develops with me. Also, because me and Lewis might be having children, we want the young woman to be on a program because we want, as a man, you want the best for your children, right? You want healthy, strong little boys and girls that can carry on your name, like genetically.
Yes, that's an excellent point where I don't have that consideration. So yes, that's a different.
So I think what we're seeing here is a little bit of the gender and age difference. Whereas with you, you're an older woman, you're not going to have any more children.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're probably not going to find a man that's been on the program as long as you anyway, right? How many of those men are around? You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not feasible. It's really not feasible for you. Whereas me and Lewis are still in a position where we can find a woman that's younger than us or close to our age and bring her up with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's nice for me too, because, and I know that too, if I bring my woman up with me on the program, that'll help me develop faster too. Because if she's not on the program and I'm going this way, then I'm dragging her with me. If she's doing the program too, it's moving her with me faster. Then we're both developing faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
One interesting thing that I've noticed actually is that as I've developed and as my vibrations increased, I'm actually coming into contact with people that have done their own work. You know, I mean,
Yes.
the Nutrition Balancing Program isn't the be all and end all of healing. You know, like there's 7 billion people on Earth. There's many ways to heaven. You know, although the nutrition is obviously very, very good. Like I'm in contact with people that have done their work and they're switched on. Do you know what I mean? And they've gone through the traumas and they're on a similar diet to nutrition. I mean, I meet people who are on a similar diet to Nutritional Balancing Program. They've gone through their own stuff. They're spiritually aware, you know. So it's not about like going out with someone that's not been on the program. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's a handful of people I know now that I'm close friends with that have come into my life that have extremely developed, and they've gone on their own journey, and they've discovered the veganism issues, and they've discovered fruit problems all by themselves, you know, and all this sort of stuff. So that's really interesting as well. They're just the people that you come into contact, you know.
Yes,
I've
thank you. Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. And that's exactly what I mean about when you develop and your awareness increases, the kind of people that you attract and that you're attracted to changes, and people have a way of finding each other. And so, yes, so there are other ways to develop, that people develop. That's absolutely true. So people can end up on sort of a similar type of a path coming from different directions. Because yes, you're right, Luke, it's going to be near impossible to find a guy that's been on the program for as long as I have in my area, right? Like, so there's different things that I consider at my age. And yeah, so the person that I am currently in a relationship with has done a lot of work in a different way. And so that's what makes it work, even though we're not exactly the same. And like I said, you know, most people are very open to what I do and are like, yeah, I want to try that, or at least parts of that, or whatever. And so that piece is important to me, for sure. But I do agree with you, Lewis, that a lot of people
very fascinating. It's a beautiful thing as well. It's a very beautiful thing. It makes you realize that there is a God out there, that there's something else going off. Because when you meet these people, you know, some of the people I've met, I'm actually astounded, like speechless. Like, how on earth have I come into contact with you? I mean, this is 1 in a million, you know. And I've been out with a couple of people that literally eat the nutrition balancing diet. I'm like, you know, get to know each other a little bit, and I'm like, what do you eat? And I'm like, tell them what I eat, and then they tell me, and I'm like, what? And I was like, whoa, this is insane, you know, this is crazy. It's really, really nice, really, really beautiful to have that faith that, you know, it's all right to be on your own if that's what you need to be on your own, because you will come into contact with someone, you know, in the right order, the right timing, really. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that we kind of shared our stories. I don't even know where I ended up, if I was what direction I went in, but Lewis, let's hear about sort of your story.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, really. So I'm 27 now, coming up to 28. Started the program when I was 21. Bearing in mind, from 15 onwards, I was totally sick. So I didn't really have any relationships between, you know, 16 and 21. I was kind of had a couple of things, but could never really form deep, meaningful connections with anyone because I wasn't really on this planet. I got into a really toxic relationship, you know, in my late teens for obvious reasons, because I was fully toxic as well. So started the program when I was 21, and literally again couldn't be in a relationship for the first 4 years, coming on to 5 years. I mean, I was in a complete mess. And I remember when I started getting healthier, I actually just felt this want to be in a relationship with someone. But by this time, I had never really come. I thought that I was so rare that I was on this program and no one's going to be like me and all that sort of stuff, that I prayed to God. I'm like, please, I just want someone who understands, just at least understands me a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And can just respect the fact that I'm on this nutrition balancing program. you know, my friends back then were still into drugs and alcohol, really. I mean, I wasn't doing that, but there was my old school friends, so you just kind of cling on to them. So I remember I was praying, and 2 weeks later, I ended up meeting this girl on a cruise ship on New Year's Eve. It was just like this really intense kind of thing started happening, and loads of weird coincidences, and the universe was just like just putting us together. It's really insane. You know, the problem was that she lived in the opposite side of the world, but we were so into each other that we kind of just, you know, and by this point I was really anxious because I hadn't been in a relationship for like a real relationship for like 10 years. And she made me feel so good, which was a problem in the beginning. She made me feel so good, like that I was like anxious, I couldn't sleep, like it was just pretty insane because I'd never experienced anything like this before. It was like overwhelming, you know, like we started to feel, you know, we started to feel our hearts, and we could, I knew when she was waking up in the morning. I mean, it was really, really weird. I mean, we had a connection that was far beyond anything I've ever experienced. You know, I knew when she was waking up, I knew when she was sending me text messages, like we was tuned in. It was really bizarre. And she ended up, long story short, she ended up coming to England to study in London, and I moved down to London to be with her. And I did the cardinal sin that most men do in their early 20s. They see a woman, they put her on a pedestal, they make her his god. And I was like, dropped everything, moved to London, you know, and this was the first time I'd ever got into relationships or anything. I was still fairly sick by this point, you know, 25-ish, you know. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I had a feisty South American woman that, you know, she knew how to wear the trousers sometimes. So I was in this relationship and really struggling with like this, you know, like ejaculation and stuff. I mean, it really took it out of me every time I used to have sleep with her, you know. Like a lot of guys listening to this will understand if they're on the program. Like literally sometimes when you ejaculate, it can take like 2 weeks to recover, like sometimes a month to even feel like I used to feel, because some people are so ill. So as you can imagine, the lust was so intense that, yeah, it kind of, that just went out the window. And I was always trying to pick myself up from just feeling terrible all the time. And like I say, she was on a pedestal, and that was the biggest issue. I was like starting to feel unhappy. Like, why do I not feel unhappy? And it started to dawn on me that I wasn't being my own self. I wasn't taking responsibility for myself, you know. But at the same time, I'm in this weird dynamic where it's like, well, she seems really good for me, etc., and all this kind of stuff. And I was learning. This was all fresh news to me, and I was reading Dr. Wilson's website about relationships, and, you know, realizing that, wow, I've kind of put her first, and I should have been focused more on God, and you know, I'm not fully healed myself, and, you know, I really struggled to sleep with this person because ejaculation's a big issue for me, you know. So we was kind of together for like a year and a half, 2 years, and just I was struggling, and she was more Buddhist mindset, you know, and that clashed with some of the stuff that I was getting into in terms of Christian thinking. I couldn't really understand the how she lived her life in terms of Buddhism. We clashed quite a lot in that sense. But she started to do the nutritional balancing program. Like, she felt better doing the diet. Like I'm in contact with her now. She still does the diet. She's like, I feel so good that I still do the diet, you know. And we had saunas together, you know. She had the supplementation. Like, there was a lot of love there. There was a lot of nice love. But, you know, when I look back at it now, like, I wasn't ready because I just didn't. I wasn't well enough. And two, I didn't understand a healthy dynamic really between male and female. Like, I tried my best, you know, and I am a fairly genuine person, and I do think about other people a lot. So it wasn't as if like it was terrible, but I just now I know a much more healthier way of being in a relationship with people, that things have kind of completely changed. So it was getting towards the end of the 2 years, and it started to dawn. I mean, she was going to move back to South America. And it was just dawning on me that it was like I was getting really freaked out. I'm like, I can't move to South America. Like, I've just started to feel better, like 5 years into the program, like I've just started to feel more normal. I've got a business for myself. You know, I'm starting to move out into the world. I'm starting to meet new friends. And then all of a sudden I'm going to go to South America and start from scratch, you know, in a relationship where I don't feel 100%. I'm not very happy. She's on a different kind of spiritual path to me, which was, it was clashing quite a lot. And, you know, in the end, yeah, I did end up speaking to Dr. Wilson about it. And, you know, my soul was quite set on staying in England. And, you know, I kind of tried it, but it was really bad. And it was, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into what happened when we split up, but it was quite intense and I was quite traumatized by it all. And I ended up moving back to England. So that was a chapter. And, you know, if I was to sum that up, I got into it from a really beautiful experience, like a really godly experience. Like I speak about my esoteric stuff that happened with me and this woman in another video when I talk about my esoteric abilities that I've gained while being on the program. I mean, some of the stuff that we had, the connection was just beyond, you know, we still have a connection now in the sense she's there when I'm going through hard times. She'll send me a message. I'm like, how have you sent me a message? Like, you could not send me a perfect message in the most perfect time. So these, we know, I think we're soul sisters, you know, that kind of stuff. So you do meet people in interesting ways.
You do, and it's one of the things that, I'm sorry, I mentioned earlier, you know, that sometimes there's people that come into our lives that are meant to help us move forward.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily meant to stay forever, but that we come across people, and I love it that you can see that. Do you know what I mean? You can see the value in that and how you were able to grow from that, and how I mean, I can even see from the story that you're telling that enabled you to move forward in quite a big way.
Huge. I mean, it's definitely slowed down my physical development, but mentally I learned so much. It's quite beyond words now, where I'm really well versed in like relationship dynamics, but I was more well versed what happened, you know, the year after. So I came back to England and I had this feeling inside myself that I just need to get things off my chest. You know, I've been ill for 10 years. As soon as I started getting well, I was in a relationship. So I was like, I just want to go out into the world and meet people. And I started meeting people in Sheffield and, you know, not getting into sexual relationships, but just meeting women, just meeting women and being around them. And I went to a few kind of like spiritually oriented gatherings and communities and kind of, yeah, just started. I just knew that I needed to meet people that are more conscious, more spiritual. I'm not saying that she wasn't, but just more mature. And I ended up kind of meeting a girl again. We had this weird connection in the beginning. It's like, you know, and that's something that I learned, that sometimes you've got to prolong, get into something. Sometimes things seem really overwhelming and it's so easy to jump into something when in reality you should take things slowly and just, you know, work through things. So I was kind of with someone for about a month last year. And then I met someone towards the end of last year, and we got we got along really, really well. Like really, really liked this person, and she was the person that pretty much ate the same nutritional balancing diet. I was like, whoa, this is intense. We had the same sense of humor. I found her attractive. Like, I don't, you know, that's something I find difficult. I don't know whether I'm picky, but you know, a lot of people, like, it's very rare that I have an attraction to someone like quite deeply. So I ended up jumping into this relationship, and basically she had past things that were affecting her, and you know, she had this certain personality that really kind of, I can't explain it. I can't really explain what happened, but we was together for 5 months and it was super intense. But she ended, I'm not going to go into it, but she ended up doing something that really, really hurt me. Like, and it shocked me to the core. I mean, the death of the ego from that was so intense. I've never, ever experienced anything like that before in my life. And it made me realize that I was getting into these relationships out of a want, out of like loneliness or a need to connect. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a healthy thing that I was getting myself into relationships. And for the first time in my life, I realized that, you know, in the 10 years when I was ill, I was kind of making an excuse that I was ill, you know. So I'm just ill. And then when I started getting better, I'm like, oh my God, I need this. I don't love myself. I need to find love. So I got into this relationship with a South American, you know. And when I came back from South America, I still had this need, this unhealthy want, you know. And what happened to me in my previous relationship, God managed to, it was the perfect relationship for me to be like, whoa, I need to find my own independence. I think that was the biggest thing for me to learn. Was I was a very independent person, but there was this even more deeper, rugged independence that I've not quite managed yet. So for the past 5 months, nearly 6 months, I've actually realized that I need to be in a much stronger relationship with God. Like, I need to love God way more than any relationship, and I didn't have that in the beginning. So at the moment, I'm going through this beautiful opening to God and Jesus Christ, and he's actually saved me. You know, the consciousness of Jesus Christ is saving me, like, at the moment, whereby I'm having this this relationship with God and reading the Bible and meeting people. And again, I'm bringing these new people into my life that are God-centered, and they're married and they understand all this stuff. Before, I was meeting more new age spiritual people, you know, so you can see the new development that I've moved up, you know. I was in the new agey type, you know, all this is new, you know, and then now I've gone up a level again where I'm meeting like grounded Christian based people. And that's and for the first time ever, I'm actually in a position whereby I'm really like focused on having a relationship with God. So that's a big thing for me, a big shift. And I know deep down in my soul that I need to concentrate on that, maybe for a few years. And I feel that I will probably draw someone into my life if I'm ready for it. But that's basically what's happened. That's basically my story in a nutshell. It's been a bit of a ride. But you know, it's been very, very interesting.
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting to listen to your story. So thank you for sharing that. And I think part of it too, for me, was realizing, you know, how you talk about, wow, I just fell into this, and there was all this, wow, like that's sort of what I get, right? That, and sometimes we lose our authentic self in those types of situations instead of being in something that's, you know, where we're comfortable just being ourselves. And one of the things that I thought was interesting that maybe we could talk about as a guy, because I don't, as a woman, I don't necessarily feel the same thing, but I do have clients who have told me that as well, in terms of them being on a healing program and the sexual component of a relationship, feeling that pressure, feeling like they do feel very drained when they ejaculate. And in my mind, like, I feel like if there is that kindness and that respectfulness for the other person as an individual and for their boundaries, if it were a situation where a couple could sort of manage that by, I mean, there's other things that you can do to be intimate and to have intimacy, even physical intimacy, because some people do feel and show their love through physical means, but that there would be a way to create that intimacy without the pressure, you know, of having to ejaculate. I don't know, maybe you could comment on that. Like, do you find that that's an issue for you in relationships?
Well, what I've noticed personally is that I attracted people into my life at certain vibrations, and I was immature in my thinking of my relationship towards sex, you know.
Right.
And the especially my last relationship, like the sexual aspect of the relationship was really big for her. And I remember splitting up with you know, we broke up, and obviously I went through this horrible trauma. And I remember saying to God, you know, I just want to meet a girl who's not interested in this sort of stuff. And it was a little bit of a, I don't want to say like, yeah, I mean, I was licking my wounds. But anyway, this other girl came into my life who was a Christian, like proper devout Christian. And we started like connecting quite deeply. And I said, you know, and I'd learned my lesson by this point. I'm like, oh, well, this is a special relationship, but I've been in this similar situation before. There's no way I'm going to jump into this. And I remember I didn't know like her relationship towards sex and stuff. And I remember like getting nervous because we were starting to get deep. And I said to her, look, you know, I have an issue with sex. I don't want to get into a sexual relationship with you at the moment. I really like you. You're an amazing person. And she turned around and says, actually, I was really worried about saying this to you as well. Like, you know, it's something that I don't want to get into unless, you know, I really love someone and I'm potentially married. And I just knew that God was speaking to me then, that it was like, there are women out there, Lewis, that have a mindset like this. And that particular relationship didn't work out, but she brought me closer to God and we started going to church together. So that's really nice. Whether that might blossom in the future, I don't know. But for me now, I just want to concentrate on my relationship with God. Yeah. And I was kind of, you know, one of my close friends who's a very developed person, like she's gone through a similar thing to me. I mean, again, we also started getting close just because, I don't know, like we're friends. Like it was this dynamic. She was helping me get over my relationship and we just started getting close. And I'm like, oh, like this is interesting. And we were speaking about like a marriage of friends and stuff. And she's very reserved in the kind of the sexual, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I knew that if I was to go out with that girl, sex wouldn't be a big thing. So again, I had this massive trauma whereby the sexual aspect of the relationship I was in earlier for 5 months was huge. And it drained me so much that I was like, God, I cannot handle this anymore. And literally, I met 2 women who was not into any of that sort of stuff at all. I didn't get into a relationship with them because I knew that I needed to do some more work. But now, like, because I'm becoming more of a Christian mindset, I mean, I've been in contact with God for a while, but not really devout, not really got into it on a deep level. You know, the people I'm surrounded by now, they're Christians. They didn't have sex before marriage, you know, and, you know, I was speaking to the kind of Christian that I was, you know, that was something was going off between us. And I was talking about my issues with ejaculation. And she even said to me, she says, look, you know, I mean, if we was to ever get married, one, we would get married because we love each other. Like we wouldn't have been having sex by then. And she's like, even after marriage, like I do not want you to feel bad. So I would be fine with us having this low sexual activity. Like that's for me is not a big thing. And I was like, man, again, I've been brought in, this woman's been brought into my life as a lesson for me to realize that there are, and I'm sure I was a lesson to her on one level as well. I mean, she was a Christian, but she'd never really come across a Christian that was a little bit more open-minded, you know, a little bit kind of colorful, a little bit in his personality. Do you understand what I mean? So I'd actually enlightened her, and I enlightened her to all the beautiful events that are going off in our area. So she helped me as much as I helped her, you know. And now, because I'm becoming more part of the churches and the part of the church groups and stuff, I know there's plenty of women out there that are open-minded, that are more Christian-based, and they want you to be happy and healthy, and they're not interested in sex, you know.
But it's
and to
not
me
even
now, that's much more healthier way of thinking.
But I don't think that being interested, I just want to respond to one thing, because this piece is important. I don't really think that it's necessarily that you want to look for somebody that's not as interested in sex per se, because sex for a lot of people, it's the intimacy and the connection, which you can have without the specific sex piece. But I think that's what I was alluding to, where being in a relationship with somebody where there's that respectfulness and you know, the kindness and the gentleness with each other, that piece is really important, because I think that you can have a person that's quite sexual and a person that's not as sexual, and you can still come to a compromise if you're kind and gentle and understanding with each other, right? And there's other ways to create intimacy, because that issue is going to come up whether you're married or not. And yes, someone who cares about you and loves you, is going to be, you know what, I want you to feel good. And that's the two individuals. And then there's a place, right, where you guys can meet together. So anyway, sorry, Luke.
I have to, Lewis. Can you stop the recording on your window?
No, we're gonna have to end it.
Well, I can leave my computer up, and then it'll just keep running until the 8 hours. It's like a YouTube cuts off at 8 hours, and then I can just cut it on the YouTube editor afterwards.
Okay, I don't know whether the YouTube editor works, but yeah, we can do that if you want.
If you guys want to keep talking, I can leave my computer. I'll just leave it.
Okay, Lewis, how are you feeling? Do you want to chat some more? This is like, it's so interesting, actually.
Yeah, I can keep talking for a while.
Okay. What else do we want to cover?
Well, maybe I'll tell you what. If people have got questions, put them all in the comments, right? I'll not answer the questions because I usually chip in. But maybe we can do another podcast next week answering all the comments that people have got.
Okay.
Maybe. But I could talk about this for hours.
I know.
No problem.
I know, it's fascinating. And I'm trying to think about other issues that come up with, I think I just briefly touched on it for people that, one person's in the program, one person's not. And I do think it can work. Like I think part of what I wanted to get across is that people can still have a healthy relationship, right? And there can definitely be, like you say, Lewis, where people are sort of getting to a place of development through different routes, right? That absolutely happens. And there can be that compatibility and the respectfulness where people have a good, solid relationship based on that. So anyway.
It all depends on the individual. Some people are totally ill. I was in that bracket. If a client came to me who was so ill, yeah, man, I'll catch you later.
All right.
If someone came to me that was so ill, I would probably honestly kind of say to them, look, you probably need to work on yourself for a few years. Do you know what I mean? Because your brain is not functioning correctly at the moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And your spirit and your aura is just not on point. Whereas, you know what I mean? I don't want to, Luke, for example, he was a little bit more healthier when he started the program. He had his problems, but it wasn't extreme.
Yeah.
So he's going to already resonate with someone, probably after year 1, 2 on the program, might be resonating with someone on his level, which took me like 6 years to accomplish, if that makes sense. So I think it all depends on the person. Like I've had clients and I look at their hair analysis, and to me it's totally obvious that their relationship is not helping them whatsoever.
Yeah.
And as a practitioner, like I will not say it directly, but I will kind of skim around the subject so they understand what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Sometimes, and I've had clients who, like you say, like the other person is complete opposite, but there's a depth there and a respect that they're two individuals, like you say, do you know what I mean? And it works for them. I have my own personal stuff. For me now, I've still got healing to do. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm way healthier than what I used to be, but I still know there's healing there. And for me, I just know that I need a bigger relationship with God than my relationships with women.
Yeah.
And that was a big problem that I've had, and a big problem that most guys have is that they will put a woman ahead of they will make a woman their God. And the same for women.
Yes,
you know
that is true for women too.
God, and then they'll just get attached to them too much.
Yeah. Exactly. And I also think that getting yourself to a place where you are healthy and what's Luke doing?
Go to the water park.
Bye. Okay, are you still there? Getting like the relationship that you have with yourself too, right, is of utmost importance. So I agree with you. If someone's starting off the program and they're not well, it's not a time that they should be dating, because you also have to think about not only who you're attracting, but what you're bringing to the relationship and all of that. So so I agree with that. for people that are in a relationship already when they start the program, or they're married or been in a relationship longer term, it's a bit more challenging. But I see that too. I can see that on the hair test, and I go, you know, something's not serving you. And you can sometimes people know it's the relationship and they're just not ready to make a move or make a decision. And oftentimes it happens at later stages on the program. And the opposite can sometimes happen, where the relationship is not a healthy one, but, you know, as Luke was alluding to, where people in a family heal together and shift together. If you have one person that's developing, as long as the other person is respectful, and that you can often kind of pull that other person along. Do you know what I mean? That can happen too, where then the other person starts to shift and change along the way, and people do end up growing together in that relationship, even if one person isn't necessarily doing the entire program, right? If they're open to different parts of it, or they're open to sort of growth.
Yeah,
So
I think it's important as well, and I did a video on it actually about the different types of love. I think it's really important, and it's something that I've learned, and it's part of this, you know, what you call the Saturn return. The Saturn return is about learning about what love actually is, and you know, I've been put in certain situations that I've actually had to learn about that. And there's a really interesting article that Dr. Wilson writes, and it's this love as it relates to the 7 chakras. You know, so you get the first chakra, love, and you see it where people love someone because they pay for they help them survive. You know, they can pay for things. They're a provider. You know, you got to see, this is a low vibrational love. This is the lowest vibration. You know what I mean? It's like a baby, like a newborn baby. They love their parents because they helps them survive. And you got the second one, which most people are at today. This is the one that people need to quickly get over, or they'll get themselves into some serious problems, which is the sexual type of love, which is the type of love that all the advertisements, you know, the world like literally runs on, is sexual type of loves. There's sex everywhere, sex sells. And it's the type of love that most people get into. It's like, I find this person attractive, so I'm going to go out with them. Totally wrong. You know, and then you got your third, which is manipulating type of love. So I love a person because actually I can manipulate them a little bit. So they're the first 3. If you want to know more, check out my video, the 7 types of love. And them types of love are called the energy vampire loves. The energy vampire. So you're not actually giving too much in a relationship, you're taking, you know. And it's so important to move up to the higher chakra forms of love, which, you know, you got the 4th center, which is the heart, which is more about friendship love. When you're more friends with the person, it's more giving, you're more giving to the relationship. Then you got number 5, which is creative sort of love. So you come together as a team to do creative endeavors together. So that's an even more beautiful type of love. And then you got wisdom type of love, and then you've God. So it's so important to try and move above them bottom 3 chakras, and to love someone not because you're sexually attracted to them, not because they're a sugar daddy, you know, not because actually secretly you can like manipulate them, like a lot of people love that. But you're moving into a relationship with someone because they're first a friend. You know, this is really important for people to realize. Don't jump into relationships with someone. That's why, you know, that's why it's so important. You know, there's nothing wrong with the waiting to get married before you have sex. It's a safety mechanism. You learn to love someone because you love the person, just because you love them. Do you know what I mean? You don't need sex from them and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And I find the more that you develop, the more that you'll not only come into contact with people that are that you got that kind of friendship sort of love where it's give and take, but also there's a creative aspect there as well, where maybe you can work together, or you can help them creatively, or they can help you. So you're working for the benefit of humanity. You know what I mean? And this is an important thing to realize. Dr. Wilson talks about it. It's called the Malkuth. It's a 2nd stage of development for humanity, where souls come together to form groups and teams. And this is something that I've noticed in my own development. And it's why I want to try and put it out there to people, to try and have patience and develop yourself, because as you develop yourself, you will draw souls into you that want to like come together and congregate, you know what I mean, in this kind of blob. And you know, I know deep down that as I develop, I'm going to bring more of them people. And you will have no idea what's happening to me and my immediate friends at the moment. It is the most beautiful experience that I have ever witnessed. I'm in contact with about 5 strong people that have all been on their developmental paths, and we're all seeking and finding God together at the same time. We're all going through amazing transformations, all separately, but we're all coming together as one. And this is something you just cannot write about. You cannot write about this stuff. Like this
Right,
is
yes,
really
can't
weird.
convey it. Just yeah.
And I get my friends call me up all the time, like, "Oh my God, Lewis, I'm going through this experience." And I'm like, "Well, so is that person. So is, friend number 1. So is friend number 3." And it's like, just have patience and try and seek God, because the Bible is a guideline for us. We're so confused these days about love, confused about what to do, this and this. Just realize that that Jesus Christ is a very developed person, and he kind of got put on earth for us to emulate and to understand and see him as a guiding light. And there is a Christ energy there and a God consciousness. And if you just get on that path, and the Nutrition Balancing Program helps you get on that path, use that as your framework. Always seek that first, and then everything else will get added on after. Seek the kingdom of heaven within, and all else will get added on thereafter. And that's the process that I've gone through, and it's a scary process, but it's kind of the process of salvation, and you do need experiences. Like I needed all of them women in my life to actually get I needed that woman, that I needed my previous relationship to put me in such a mess. Like I was totally, like, my ego was totally killed. It was the perfect experience for me to have ego death and be like, oh my God, I'm so traumatized, I cannot be with another woman for the foreseeable future. And that anxiety, that need for connection, brought me into contact with God even more. Way more than what it was 2 years back. So yeah, I wanted to just get that monologue off my chest.
No, that's fantastic. And it's those experiences, and it's interesting because we probably sometimes don't realize it when we're going through them at the time. But it's those times that are often the most challenging. And it's even the times on the program that are the most challenging, with different healing reactions and retracings, that allow us to change and grow and get to a certain level, which is why we talk about, those ups, and you talked about the ups and downs, but even on the program, there's ups and downs. And that's all what that's about, that the downs really allow us to be propelled to the ups. And sometimes you don't see it when you're in it, but
and it's difficult to love yourself through them periods. It really is. And I've never really I've never really figured out a good approach that always keeps me strong. But you've got to realize sometimes that the more you develop, the more you realize that God loves you and he wants you to heal and develop. And at the end of the day, for you to have free will means that he can't kind of come on TV and say, you need to do this. It's about you coming to your own conclusions. And the only way for you to come to your own conclusion is to be given a challenge for you to either complete or don't complete. By you completing it, by using your own free will, is you moving a step above in development, and realizing sometimes that we've got to pay off past debts. So if you do something bad, in terms of, like, in Buddhism, it's called karma, in Christianity, it's eye for an eye, so if you've sinned, they call it in Christianity, if you've sinned, if basically you did bad stuff, it's like you're in debt. Do you know what I mean? And I see going through healing reactions and going through challenging times, you're like you're paying off your debt. Do you know what I mean? You're paying off your debt a little bit, and you're just try and be thankful. The physical world is a classroom, and over on the other side is perfect. So realize that we're in a classroom, and classrooms are here to, you're here to learn lessons and stuff, and that's what it is. And every time you go through a challenging time, just pray and speak to your practitioner and read Dr. Wilson's website and listen to
exactly. I remember yes.
You'll get the guidance. The guidance will come in ways that you cannot understand too well. And it's actually having them experiences whereby it's so weird that you've come into contact with this article. It's so weird that you've met this person. That's God speaking. You know, that's Jesus Christ speaking, or whatever you want to call it. Love, that's love speaking. So the more you have these experiences, the more you realize, oh, wow, this is real, man. This is real. And you realize that everything that's happened in the past is breaking down that ego structure that you've had to create for yourself in order to survive this crazy world. But it's just God wants you to become like Jesus, or like Dr. Wilson, or like an advanced soul. And in order to do that, you have to go through certain experiences, and everyone's different in relationships. You know, that's important to realize that everyone's different. You might be in a perfect relationship now. You might need to seek God. You might need to be single and heal. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone's different. So don't listen to me, Susan and Luke, and try and put yourself in the bracket that we're in, because we've all gone through our own experiences. You know, so it's up to you to take some self-responsibility and try and ask questions and see which route you need for them.
And I even think that some of the, like, when you talk about, you know, that's paying off debt, I look at it as removing interference, whether or not that's past trauma or physical interference like heavy metals or different toxins that clog up our system that prevent us from, you know, being the full expression of who we are. It's on an emotional, spiritual, physical level, developing and being on this program is a lot about removing interference to be our true selves, right? To be our authentic selves. And I love that piece of it, because we talk about just sort of getting rid of stuff layer by layer by layer. And so we go through different phases of working on different layers, right? The spiritual level, the physical level, all sorts of things start to come up. And it's really quite amazing.
And sometimes that's what relationships do. Like,
yeah,
a lot of people think healing reactions are physical, a physical toxin, a physical this, but sometimes a relationship will teach you a major lesson, which is a spiritual lesson. You know, like I would have never understood that I needed to be more independent. Just it's not that I wasn't independent, but just more of a rugged individual without having that experience that was really traumatic. I don't think there was any other way for me personally to understand that, you know. So I understand how traumatic. I mean, you feel like it's such a dreadful feeling when you realize that I need to get out of this relationship, and especially if you've got children and this and this. You know, I have clients who, you know, I know one client who actually asked me this question yesterday. She'll be watching this, and this is God speaking to you, who you're watching this. You asked me this question yesterday about relationships, and we did a podcast on relationships today. And I'm pretty sure that someone has said something in this past 1.5 hours that's resonated with you. And that's how God works. You know what I mean? And that's what you need to pick up on. Don't feel that you are in a, you know, on one level you're in a not a nice situation. We understand that. But on another level, realize that you're actually becoming enlightened. You're like God's like a master sculpture. You know, everyone's a diamond in the rough. We've just got to kind of keep polishing the diamond and have faith that you're going to get through it. And that's what's so beautiful about the nutritional balancing program, because it is a crazy world. It's a crazy world, you know. And what the program does is it keeps you anchored on that path that everyone's trying to get on one way or another, you know. So when you are going through healing reactions, realize that, you know, you're probably, you know, without sounding arrogant, you're probably further along in this process than someone else. You know, you're going through a healing reaction and you're going to get over it in a couple of weeks, whereas someone in another position, it might take them 5 years of going through another process of maybe doing fruitarianism or whatever, something really challenging to get to a point of enlightenment. Whereas the nutrition balancing program, you know, take it from us that this is super like pure, you know. So actually you go, it's like stepping in the fast lane of development.
That's right. And sometimes, and I don't know what your client's particular situation is, but I also wanted to touch on something, just especially with people with children involved. Sometimes there are situations that have come up on the program, and I've had a couple of clients like this where, you know, as they progress and they get healthier, they realize that the relationship that they're in is not a healthy situation at all, not only for themselves, but, you know, they're trying to protect their children. And sometimes it's not a good time for them to leave, like even if they have that awareness. So I also just, you know, I'm not a relationship expert or anything, but I also want to caution people that sometimes you get to a place where you're like, okay, I need to get out now. And if it's feasible and it's the right decision, great. But to also be cautious to go, you know, is this going to work for me, for my children, and the practical side of it too? Because I have had a couple clients where they've known it, but they've waited for, you know, they've tried to make things work. They've waited for the right opportunity, and then they have, you know, left the relationship and it's worked out well. But, you know, I just would caution people from going, okay, I'm out of this relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I mean, yeah, I mean, I've been in a position as a you know, an independent young guy to be able to be in a position where it's like, all right, I'm done.
yes.
But yeah, I mean, if you've got kids, I think, you know, just, even if you don't believe in prayer, just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because it does really just genuinely help, like just to get things out there, and you'll be surprised at some of the stuff that will come back, you know, because like I say, everyone's different, and especially you got children, you need to be
exactly.
So make sure you speak to a lot of people, speak to your practitioner, speak to your family, speak to friends that understand, you know, and family that understand, because when you're ill and your brain's toxic, sometimes you can make decisions that are not in the best interest of the whole party.
Exactly.
So if you get multiple responses, and your practitioner can look at your hair analysis test, you know, and you can speak to people that are close to you and on a deeper level, then that's always much better than making a brash decision. You know,
exactly. And of course, I mean, that doesn't include if it's really an abusive situation, but in some cases it's not the wisest decision just to up and leave. So yeah, exactly. So just to sort of say that as a disclaimer, but yeah, so it is, it's sort of amazing what can happen when you allow yourself, you know, to sort of go through those experiences and be aware of them and learn from them. And I love it how you're able to go back and say, you know, wow, that was really tough, but I needed that to get here. And sometimes it takes people quite a while to make that connection, but I think that's wonderful. Yeah.
Just wanted to quickly touch on something that a lot of people don't do these days, and I've been in this position, and I'm sure loads of other people, especially younger people, is just learning to get to know the other person. We just jump into things these days, and you need to see it from a perspective of, hold on a minute, I could potentially be with this person for the rest of my life. This is a big decision, and a lot of people these days do not take time to test their suitors. You know, some people come along and they seem amazing on the surface. You know, I tend to look at people a little bit like artists carrying around a painting, you know, and a lot of people will walk around and be like, that is a nice painting, I'm going to go and be with that painting. But they don't get time to understand the painter, the artist behind that painting. And it's so important to do that, because you might find out after a month, 2 months, 3 months, even 6 months, that there's certain things there that are just not right for you, like total clashes. And we live in this environment these days where we've got Tinder. You know, I don't know if you've got that in America, but we just swiping right, like just don't get to know each other. Then you meet people, and then I know people that are going out with someone after like a week, 2 weeks, and then you start sleeping with them.
Yeah.
I've been in this sleeping with them after like the 3rd date, the 4th date, and then you're in, and then like I've woke up after like week, 2 weeks, and I'm like, I'm actually like in a relationship with this person. I'm been sleeping with this person. I don't even know who they are, you know. And then like 2 months later, you'll just be like, this person's not for me. And you know, I like to look at my friends around me. I have a lot of friends that if I didn't know them and I would look at them as a painting, I would be like, you're a great painting, I'm going to get with you. But because they're my friends, I've got to know them over time and over months. you know, and even my Facebook friends, if I think now from this perspective that I'm in, because I've got to know them after a while, I know that we're not compatible.
Right.
Even though if I would have seen them on Tinder, I would have been like, yeah, swipe right. I'm definitely
yes.
Go out with you.
But you know, that's the key though.
Point on that.
Yeah, but that's the key, is that I think it's important to recognize that people normally reveal themselves to you over time. Like the older that I get, I feel like I'm more and more of my authentic self. And so when I am dating, I'm quite upfront. Like I'm quite like, this is who I am. This is the program. This is like, you know, no, sorry, I can't stay up that late because I'm just tired, right? I'm not going to pretend I'm somebody I'm not, because what happens is if you pretend somebody you're not, then you're going to attract somebody that's attracted to the person that you're not really. So that just doesn't work for me anymore. I am who I am. If that resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, great. I'm not offended. It's not going to be a personal slight to me if that's not your thing, right? So there's no sort of issues there for me at all. But generally, and I think almost everybody is like this, and this is where I think that what you're saying to people about slowing down and getting to know the person, being on a friend level first, and is really important, because people reveal themselves to you over time. And that's why when people end up getting married before knowing each other for more than a year or 2 years, I'm always like, it takes that long to really get to know somebody in different situations. And most people can get along when everything is going well, right? Who can't get along when you're out doing something fun? But for me, it's more important, you know, how do two people resolve conflict together? Can they work together as a team? Is that person going to really have your back? You know, if you end up in a wheelchair, are they going to be, see you later? Or are they going to be, no, I'm here behind you, pushing you. I've got your back. So those are really sort of the key important things. And you don't know that about somebody when you've known them for a month or 2 months. And so, yeah, do you want to be jumping into bed with somebody after 3 or 4 dates when you don't even know who they are? Well, that's that sort of sexual chemistry that you were talking about. That's not the real attraction that you have to a person's spirit or their soul, because you don't know that yet after that short period of time. So we are very much in a culture where it's like, yeah, swipe right, swipe left. But that isn't really real life, and that's not sort of about who the person is really like. For sure. I don't know. It's about finding somebody that you really feel that's a place of shelter and a place of comfort for you. Do you know what I mean? That your authentic self can be free in that environment without judgment, knowing that your authentic self is respected there. So it takes time to get to know somebody. Because every example that you've said where you've gone, well, I've gotten to know these people, and I know and I've gotten to know these people, and over time they're awesome, they're my great friends. Well, yes, it's over time that you've realized that. And if that doesn't happen, then two people they end up parting ways. That's what dating is for, but people have changed what dating is now, I think, right? Dating really is that time where you go, well, do I want to go deeper, or is this not a good fit for me? So
be confident in who you are. Be confident to say, look, I don't know who you are. Do you know what I mean? That takes a lot of self-esteem and I mean, I've been out with people now in the past when there was red flags in the beginning. And because I didn't have the confidence and the self-esteem, and this person looked on the surface to be great, I jumped in when there was red flags. And actually, when I look back now, it's like I should have picked up on that even more, but I didn't have the self-confidence to realize that, you know what, there's plenty of fish in the sea, and that's a red flag that I should have picked up on. Do you know what I mean? But you don't, because you get like, it washes over your eyes, love washes over your eyes, you jump into something, you know. Also, really like, question, do you want a relationship? Are you ready for a relationship? You know what I mean? A lot of people probably are not. I mean, they're getting into it for the wrong reasons. They feel lonely, they've got low self-confidence, they've got low self-esteem, that other person makes them feel better, like that, they're generally like some questions you need to ask yourself, and try and tune into your soul. It's another thing that people don't do these days, is like, we do have a soul and we have an ego, and society is telling us to do one thing, but actually, if you actually listen to your soul might just want to heal for a couple of years.
Exactly.
Your soul might just want to get in touch with your family, get closer to your family. It might want to set up a business. I mean, guys, you know, one big issue, in my opinion, with guys is that they don't take the time to cultivate themselves. They don't take the time to work on a business venture, to be financially stable. Do you know what I mean? To cultivate their own sense of self, to cultivate their own authenticity, so they can hold space for a relationship. I always say to people that you've got to build your cake, and a relationship's a little bit like a cherry on top of the cake. Exactly. A lot of the guys just go straight for the cherry without building, you know, and you can see it in the book of Genesis. I mean, I'll go back to the Bible. God created man, and he told him to work in the Garden of Eden. Go out and work. No, guys, don't go out, do the steps that God laid out for us. Go out and work. Okay, that's number one. Number two, cultivate. Go and cultivate, which means just become all that you are. Do you know what I mean? Work on your skills, work on your loves, work on your adventures, you know, work on yourself. And then, you know, number three is understand the word. I mean, if you know, I'm getting more into this now, is understand the truth, live by the truth, and realize what the truth's all about. And then after that is like, then God said, you know, that I don't feel like man should be alone, so he created woman. And a lot of guys just jump straight into step 5 without cultivating themselves, without becoming all that they can be. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying spend years and years like cultivating, but just have some basics there.
And
do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Do you have a job that are you in a purposeful? That's a big thing. Are you doing something that's meaningful? Do you know what I mean? Because if you're not doing something that's meaningful, you're searching for meaning elsewhere, which often comes sometimes in the wrong areas, like a relationship. Right. You know, like working on your purpose to me has been such a massive thing, because I'm like grounded in my purpose, grounded in my meaning for life. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I'm cultivating myself, and I know that as I cultivate myself even more, I will become more of like a garden for Eve to come into.
Exactly. And see, that's the part where I was saying the relationship with yourself is like, to have all that first is of utmost importance. If you need to have happiness and contentment on your own and with yourself before you can possibly have a good relationship with somebody else. If you're a person that is looking for somebody because you're lonely, or you want somebody else to make you happy, that's another thing that a lot of people fall into. And then they're in this relationship and they're saying, well, you don't make me happy anymore. But that's not really the way it works. You need to be happy in yourself, and to create your own happiness, find somebody who's doing the same, and then you're in a place where it truly is heaven being with that person, right? Mm-hmm. But as soon as you fall into the trap of thinking it's the other person that's supposed to make you happy, that is no longer the case.
The rest
so
of the disaster.
You have to be in a place where what you're bringing, and find somebody that's in the same place and is bringing that, where there's the happiness within themselves. And yeah, it's truly bliss when it's like that.
And one thing that you will learn about relationships is your codependency types.
Yes.
How you're attached to your partner is often how you was attached to your parents when you were born, and it's part of the Saturn return for guys. It's dealing, and this is what happens. You move into a 4 laws pattern. It's happened to me. You know, I moved into 4 laws. I'm like, whoa, what am I doing in 4 laws? I've never been in 4 laws for 5 years, 6 years. I move into it, and I'm like, Dr. Wilson, why have I got into this? It's like, well, usually it's when you're working on to resolve unhealthy dependency patterns with your parents, and that's what happened. I was what they would call a more anxiously attached child to my mother, and I ended up attracting. I got myself into anxiously attached dependency on my my partner, and I attracted the opposite. I attracted what they would call so there's anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. So I attracted an avoidant type, 2 avoidant type. Yeah, and
that's not a good mix.
No, but that's what happens. It's very common. Super common. And it was the fireworks in that made me real, that healed my dependency issues I had with my parents.
Yeah.
So it gets quite deep on a deeper level, you know, like I feel like I'm just coming out of that now, but I'm still working on that. And this is what I mean why I've stopped being unhealthily anxious towards people, because now I'm becoming more dependent on God.
Right.
So that's
well,
how
and
I
then more
feel
secure, a more secure attachment style where you're secure in yourself.
For sure.
Yeah.
And now I understand this stuff. Like if you start reading about codependency, now I understand it. I can tell pretty quickly what type of, I mean, I've been in positions now with other women who are very, very similar to my past. And I know straight away within the first 10 minutes. And I know that person's not for me. I know maybe, you know, you might be looking at this thinking, oh, I'm jumping, like, no, you know, when you can tune in to how people are, like, you'll be surprised that you can pick up people straight away. And it's like, I understand the type of person that you are. And I'm no judgment, but I know for me,
it's just a different,
that's a thing that I got into. And now I've attracted into my life more secure individuals. And I can tell that, you know, but I've decided not to get into a relationship for the time being because I'm working.
Exactly.
I'm working on me being more securely independent from my anxious attachment.
Yeah.
To my parents. I mean, it wasn't severe. I didn't attract severe avoidance, but it was just enough for things to blow up. So that's a very interesting thing for anyone to get into. There's a really cool book called Attached. And there's a really cool book called Codependency for Dummies. So check that out. You'll be astounded at, you know, if you read the anxious attachment and the avoidant attachment, it's like, oh man, like I'm definitely going out with avoidant and I'm anxious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, cool.
Definitely. Good. Okay, good. Well, let's call it a day, maybe.
Yep. Well, all right, guys. Thanks for watching. So Susan is a practitioner. So if you want to get in touch with Susan, then Susan, do you want to throw out your details?
Sure. My website is nutritionalbalancinglifestyle.com. And my email address is info@nutritionalbalancinglifestyle.com. And that's the best way to reach me.
Cool. And if you've not seen me before, my name's Rowlands. I'm also a nutritional balancing practitioner. If you want to get in touch with me, just email me, lewis@deephealingspace.com. My website is deephealingspace.com as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Tune in next time.